I welcome you on behalf of the Champine family. We thank you for being here this morning as we celebrate the life of Mike. It's quite the honor for all of you to come and worship with us and to honor him. So will you pray with me this morning? Our gracious Lord, how thankful we are, Lord, that we have such a place to come into, to not only worship you and honor you, Lord, but to honor your soldier, Mike. We thank you, Lord, for the life that he led, for the story that you created in his many years of life. We thank you for his children and his family and his wife. We thank you for Irene and her 36 years of marriage, Lord. What a wonderful, wonderful tribute, not only to them, but to you. Lord, I pray for the family as they are here to honor and to celebrate Mike's life. And I would pray, Lord, that there would be a sense of calming and a sense of peace that would come over each family member. I would pray that they would have remembrances of times gone by, and that they would be good memories. I thank you for Sherry and for Janice and the other siblings that have gone on before, Lord, and I just pray that as they sit and as they think and as they remember, Lord, that you would bless them, that your hand would be upon them, that your comforter would come and wrap his arms around them. We pray, Lord, that your presence is felt here this morning, and we ask this in your precious and holy name. Amen. Amazing grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
I don't think I can do this alone, so I had to bring him up here. I just wanted to say this before I said the poem, and I found this. It says, I think sometimes a person's spirit is so strong that it never completely leaves the earth, but remains scattered forever among all those who have left him. And I think that's Mike. I really believe that. Okay, it says, some people often say we are not promised a rose garden. However, we study the beauty of the rose along the path of the garden. We can't help but know that God has given us a rose garden to walk through his life. The rose must be rooted deep in fertile earth and nurtured every day. It must be planted away from the other plants and grow and entangle the stem and finally crush the snuff of life. We are challenged through God's world to be careful, not to let other things entangle us, to cause us to fail to grow. Jesus said, be strong, endure hardness, prosper, put on the armor of God for protection against the evil one. As we look through the long stem of a rose with a bud full and nearly ready to blossom in all its beauty, we must first know that below the bud are many thorns. If we were to break off each thorn and cast it away, the minute it appeared, the stem would soon lose its strength and the bud would never blossom. Life is at best full of thorns. We cannot just pull these off and cast them away. Instead, we must face them, encounter them, and struggle with them and carefully press through them so they don't prick our flesh and cause a wound. Pulling on through every trial in faith. Faith brings the victory. Hardship brings the strength. Trials will bring patience. Patience will bring endurance until life has reached the top, and victory will all help us blossom into the life that Jesus had planned for us. He has given us a rose garden. The question is, what will we do with it? What will we do with the life that Jesus has planned for us? When the going gets tough, someone had said the tough gets going. With each new day, we find a thorn on our path. Will it break the flesh, or will we cry for help, saying, Lord, help me through. Take my hand, lest I fall. We think of the writing footprints, but only one set of footprints remained. He is carrying us around the thorns of life. I stand amazed in a rose garden to look deep in the beauty of the blooming flower, and know the lovely flower is only so fragrant, so strong, so beautiful, in all its splendor, because it first passed through the thorns on its way. I think of life as like an empty basket. Life is like a petal basket. I start my walk, I am young and small with my empty basket. But with each and every burden, every heartache, every pain, each time I fall in this walk of life, I place a crushed blossom of a rose inside my petal basket. I press onward, upward, on hills too steep to climb. My basket was too heavy for me to carry along. All alone, I fell beneath the load. I laid in helpless agony, ashamed because I failed. But then I heard a still small voice. The Master now is near. He reached down his strong and mighty arm, picked up my broken frame. He clutched my petal basket, filled with a smile on his face. I heard him whisper gently, now let go, my son, and set it free. I'll carry your load today. Cast all your cares upon the Lord and know he cares. Always come with me through the garden. I'll walk with you today. This was by Major Harry Letherland, and he was just a wonderful, wonderful man.
Oh, my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the world thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the roaring thunder, thy power throughout the universe display. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art.
I have a couple of readings, one from Mike's wife Irene and the other from his daughter Shauna. But first, just a little bit about the service that they had out in San Diego for Mike. At the beginning of it, I don't want to be that loud.
It's my height. We want you to.
Pastor D made mention of the fact that Mike was on loan from the Salvation Army to the First Church of the Nazarene, and he thanked the Salvation Army for his service. This is from Irene, a tribute to Mike. Mike and I met at the VA hospital in San Diego in 1980. When I first met him, I was working in a temporary position as a night nursing supervisor. A couple of months later, I wound up working on the same surgical unit as he. Prior to working on that unit, I knew who he was, but that was it. When I was assigned to that unit, Mike and I got along well, but I really had no big interest in him. But apparently, he did. He would follow me around the unit in an unobvious way. He knew I was very good at starting IVs, so he would ask me to help start an IV on a patient because he was having difficulty. Little did I know that at the time he had been a corpsman in Vietnam and probably started IVs in the dark, in the night, in the jungle, during a driving rainstorm and bullets flying all around him. We did not get serious until after one very busy, crazy night when Mike suggested that 7 of us go out to breakfast, beer, and pool. You need to remember, 8 a.m. was our 5 p.m. It was then that we realized we had feelings for each other, and the rest is history. When we started dating, Mike was very upfront about having been married before, and he had had 2 children from that marriage. He said to me that his 2 kids were a package deal, even though they did not live with him. The first time I met Shauna and Corey, Shauna was 8 years old, and Corey was 5 years old. We hit it off right away, and I've loved them ever since. Shauna and I have a very special bond. Even though she calls me Irene, she tells people I am her mom. On Friday, November 13th, 1981, Mike and I got married in this church. It was Mike's idea to get married on Friday the 13th. After surviving some bad luck in the past, he could no longer feel superstitious, and getting married on that day could only bring better things. He was right. Yes, I do cave in once in a while and admit he was right. This past November, we celebrated 36 wonderful years together. One of Mike's favorite hobbies was making beef jerky. We have a professional grade slicer to get the meat slices to just the right thickness. His favorite place to get jerky spice was from a small place called Alpine Touch in, and I'm hopefully not going to bury this or murder it, Choteau, Montana. His favorite time of the year to make it was at Christmas. He would buy about 15 or so pounds of eye of round roast to make his jerky with. It was a 2-day process. One day to slice and season the meat, let it marinate overnight, and then dehydrate the next day. He had a pretty good system. Mike did not eat very much of the jerky himself. He may have a piece or 2, but the rest he would bag up and give to people. People were so impressed with his jerky that they would want to buy it, and he would never take any money. People's joy and satisfaction was payment enough. Our pastor always looked forward to getting some jerky. He keeps it in his desk drawer in the office at the church, and he would take small pieces and savor every bite whenever he would have some. I promised Pastor D I would uphold the tradition. It made him smile. Mike would always spend time with our daughter Shauna and her family in Montana. It got to the point we had to send her her own supply of beef jerky because the rest of the family would get to it before she could have any. Yes, folks, his jerky is that good, and yes, I can testify we definitely loved it. Some of his past hobbies were gardening, reading, going to smooth jazz concerts, anything related to water except swimming. Even though he was a lifeguard at the Salvation Army church camp in high school, he hated swimming. He loved his Green Bay Packers. In our younger days, before Arthur, and that's what she calls arthritis, decided to homestead in our joints, we loved to go on camping trips. Having been a Boy Scout, he always liked to be prepared, as they say. He would pack all kinds of stuff for just in case. I think it would have been easier to put wheels under the house and toward the house. And my wife is probably looking at me right now knowing where I got that from. The best part of camping and evenings at the beach in San Diego was sitting around a nice fire, sipping wine, and listening to smooth jazz. Mike enjoyed visiting and visits from family. He enjoyed showing visitors around San Diego. One of our most memorable visits to Wisconsin was when Maury and Wendy, Mike and I stopped at a country kitchen at 12:30 at night for something to eat. All 4 of us had a case of the Giddies. And she says, I can finish telling the story. No, you already think that I'm foolish enough without that. All I can say is that we were the oldest people in the country kitchen, and we almost got kicked out because of our behavior. Whenever the 4 of us got together, we were very good at punning with each other. Some of the things we would say were very punny, and others would elicit a groan, but we always had a good laugh and a good time. As many of you know, Mike liked hearing and telling a good joke. He had a whole library of them in his head, and he knew how to put his own spin on some of the older jokes. My kids still remember artichokes 3 for $1. When Mike and I would come to visit Mom and Dad, some of the nieces would come by. We would gather around the kitchen table and Mike would tell some of his jokes. Some of them were somewhat colorful. Of course, Mom was in the next room and could overhear them. The nieces were surprised that he would tell them within earshot of his mom. And without fail, there was a stern but loving voice in the other room yelling, "Michael!" Mike would just sit there with a big grin on his face and continue his jokes. Mike really enjoyed getting together with his best friend and brother, Jim Tognazzini, and going to San Diego Padre baseball games. He enjoyed the ball games, but he really enjoyed his time and cherished it with Jim. They had a very special bond. When the Padres schedule would come out in the early spring, Jim would send him a schedule, and then they would decide which 4 or 5 games they wanted to attend. Before every game, Mike and Jim would go to this Mexican restaurant, Rockin' Baja Lobster, which was near the ballpark. Then they would have pregame lunch of the Rockin' Baja bucket, which consisted of shrimp, slip lobster, and sometimes chicken or carne asada and cold beer. What she didn't put in here is they would also say that when they were done eating, they'd have to be hosed off because there was so much sauce and grease. These baseball game outings were their time together, and I strongly encouraged it. Only one time did Jim's wife Sabina and I go to the game with them. It was against the New York Yankees. Since Sabina was originally from New Jersey and I from Connecticut, I guess they felt it was okay for us to tag along. During all the years they went to the games, only 2 other people were invited to join their afternoon of brotherhood fun. They were son-in-law Ross and Mike's nephew, Maury. I know they both have fond and wonderful memories of that experience. Yes, indeed. Mike's faith in God was always present. He had periods in his life where he questioned what God's purpose for him on earth was, especially when he came back from Vietnam. Mike was one of 20 corpsmen stationed at Camp Pendleton who had volunteered to go to Vietnam. Of the 20 who went, only 2 came back, Mike and 1 other corpsman. After he returned and visited his folks, he had questioned his faith and why he came back, and the other 18 did not. His mom told him, "God has a plan for you." His mom was right. He had an opportunity to become a Salvation Army officer, but he did not feel like that was a good fit for him. Mike spent 24 years in the Navy in the medical field. During his 24 years, he was a corpsman, earned an RN degree, became a physician's assistant. He achieved all 9 enlisted ranks and all 4 warrant officer ranks. In Vietnam, he was awarded 2 Purple Hearts for wounds he incurred. He also received a Bronze Star during the Battle of Hue City during the Tet Offensive in 1968. He was awarded the Bronze Star because he was trapped in the university with wounded Marines for several days. He also set up the first landing zone during that battle. When someone would talk to him about earning the Bronze Star, he would tell you, "I was just doing my job." He was very humble and low-key about it. Rarely did he speak of his time in Vietnam. When Mike retired from the Navy in 1990, he was honored by having a Rear Admiral attend his ceremony. This admiral had the utmost respect for Mike because Mike was able to accomplish what the admiral had ordered, even though at times what was asked was somewhat daunting. Mike's mom, who attended the ceremony, got to meet the admiral. She loved all the gold braid on the admiral's sleeve, and of course, Mom had to stroke the sleeve. The admiral got a big kick out of it. Mike's career in the medical field turned out to be his ministry. He ministered to people both physically, emotionally, and spiritually. He had a special knack for connecting with his patients. He believed that in treating his patients like family, and that that's the way they would like to be treated. During his ministry as a physician's assistant, he had several of his patients who were not only patients, but became friends. There were several patients that Mike had seen when they were toddlers. They grew up and started families of their own, and he also took care of their babies. Mike had the small town feel in a big city. Also, there were several patients of his who refused to see any other provider other than Mike. Mike was used to my zanius, especially when it came to dogs and animals. Mike got me my first dog ever in 1985. He was an Alaskan Malamute named Nanook. In his prime, he weighed 155 pounds. Big dog, big baby. We have not been without a dog since. For many years, Mike did not want the dogs on the bed, let alone one to sleep in the bed. Over the years, I managed to get Mike to rethink his thinking to the point where he enjoyed having the dogs in bed with him and snuggling with them. See, old dogs can be taught new tricks. He was also tolerant of my four-legged house guests. Friends and neighbors who owned dogs and were going on trips, their dogs would stay at our house. I would tell him, we are having so-and-so's dog over here for a week or 2 or 5. Yes, folks, 5 weeks. He would say, okay. Even though he did not get involved with caring for our guests, he did enjoy them. He loved it when the smaller guests would like to sit on his lap. He was known to take out his camera and snap a picture or two. Mike also enjoyed going to dog obedience class with me and the dogs. He liked seeing the other dogs, along with learning what to do and training our dogs. Along with the dogs, we had 2 guinea pigs. The grandkids had them, and I thought it would be a good way to have something in common with them. Again, Mike tolerated my craziness, and again, the old dog learned to love them as well. Mike was a hopeless romantic. He never forgot a birthday or anniversary. He always gave me a nice piece of jewelry. He knew the sales ladies at JCPenney's jewelry counter by name. They knew what his tastes were in jewelry for me. I never got something I didn't like. I never had to worry about getting a lawnmower or a vacuum cleaner. Okay. For a gift. He would never understand why people would buy something that impersonal for someone special in their life. Needless to say, he was the envy of a lot of women. Over the past year, both Mike and I have experienced some significant medical issues. Last May, Mike was diagnosed with bladder cancer. He was fortunate in that he did not have to remove his bladder. He had 6 chemo treatments where the medication was installed directly into the bladder. Because of the recurrence rate of this type of cancer is very high, and his was stage 4, and it involved the bladder muscle, having his bladder removed was a real possibility at some point. Mike and I were not stressed about it because we felt it was in God's hands. We both were at peace with that. As a result of being in the Vietnam War and exposed to Agent Orange, Mike developed diabetes. He had never had to go on insulin, but his oral medication had to be doubled, and had 1 visit to the emergency room this last fall for blood sugar over 500. A few months ago, Mike sought counseling to deal with his demons from Vietnam. For many years, he fought facing them. He finally found peace with himself after talking about them with a counselor. Last May, I wound up in the hospital and in rehab because my drinking got the better of me physically. The day I stopped drinking, Mike did too. It will be 1 year on May 12th. Mike was, and still is spiritually, my biggest supporter. When I received Mike's ashes, I opened the box so that I could give some ashes to our daughter Shauna and take some for myself as well so they could be scattered elsewhere. Before I resealed the box with his ashes, I put it in my letter of amends, gratitude, and love to him, along with a pocket cross that I had made for him and he had on him the day he passed away. In my letter, I wrote that I promised to do my utmost best never to drink again. Despite Mike's passing, I have no desire to pick up a drink. I don't know if there was ever a truly good ending to someone's life, but for me, the last evening and the morning of the day Mike passed away will always be cherished memory for me. On Sunday, March 4th, we drove to Dana Point, California to Jim and Sabina's house. That afternoon, we had a nice visit at their home, and the 4 of us went to dinner and a smooth jazz concert. Keiko Matsui, a jazz pianist that we all enjoy, was performing that evening. We had a great time. Mike and I spent the night at Jim and Sabina's. The next morning, before we left, Jim and Mike gave what was to be the very last hug, and I love you, brother, to each other. That night after Mike passed away, the most difficult phone call next to calling Shauna was making the call to Jim. I miss Mike's presence very much, but my heart and soul are filled with great joy and happiness. It is because on March 5th, 2018, when he was promoted to glory, he was spiritually fit. He left this world holding no grudges or hatred, nor was he trapped by his demons, knowing that I am at peace and feel very comforted. On March 7th, I posted this thought. In the Salvation Army, when a person dies, they are promoted to glory. Mike was promoted with full honors. Just as he wore his military uniform with pride and respect, he is wearing his heavenly uniform in the same way. Every morning I pray and meditate. One morning, a couple of days after Mike passed away, I was sitting in my chair meditating and praying. I was feeling chilled. I did not have the heat on. I had my hands on my lap and they were cold. And as I was sitting there, I felt this soft, warm, gentle touch on my hands and a voice telling me everything was going to be okay. It was the voice of God. My hands warmed up, I no longer felt chilled. This overwhelming sense of peace came over me. Every day I feel God's presence, and I do not feel so alone. I know that God is holding my hands as I walk through this new journey in my life. Therefore, I can be strong and carry on. I know Mike is proud that I can. My dearest Mike, thank you for all your wonderful gifts, you and beautiful memories. I will cherish them forever. I'm looking forward to being with you again someday. I love you very much. All my love forever, Irene. And then a short reading from Shauna. What is a superhero? I would like to tell you about my superhero, Mike Champine, also known as Dad to me. My dad was a strong, kind, patriotic, hardworking, optimistic, loving, funny, and humble man. Dad taught me so much about life and helped me to become the woman I am. As a kid, Dad called us weekly. As I became an adult, we often talked several times a week and sometimes daily. As our visits got closer, the more excited we became to see each other. We would count the days down and talk daily as the time became closer. I always knew Dad was only a phone call away, and I could always count on him. Throughout my adult life, there were several times when I was struggling that Dad flew to Montana and helped me. His mere presence calmed me. Dad had a great sense of humor and enjoyed laughing and making people laugh. Even when I was sad, scared, or hurting through my tears, Dad made me laugh and smile. In the summer of 1982, when I was 10 years old, Dad and Irene picked up my brother Corey and I in Montana to travel across the United States as they moved to Virginia for my dad to attend physician's assistant school. I have fond memories of this trip with my dad and Irene. We camped, saw sights, and visited with family and friends along the way. The beginning of our trip started with a week of camping at Gardner, Montana, just outside of the north entrance to Yellowstone National Park. Each day we would travel into Yellowstone to explore a different part of the park and all of God's beauty. One day, while out exploring, we came upon a grassy open area in which a herd of buffalo were grazing. Dad parked the van and we got out and joined all the other tourists looking to get a closer view and capture pictures of these mammoth-looking animals. As we were watching the buffalo grazing on the green grass and taking pictures, Dad moved closer and closer to get a good picture of one. Well, the buffalo must have felt that Dad was in his space, and because he picked up his head and started chasing Dad. All I remember was everyone running to get in their vehicles and Irene getting Corey and I into the van. We watched from the van as the buffalo chased Dad, fearing the buffalo would get him. Soon the buffalo quit running after Dad and went back to grazing, and as Dad got back into the van, he looked at us and said, "Wow, I fooled him." Both Corey and I burst into tears. Dad was patriotic, a military man through and through. Every 2 weeks he got a haircut. It was a standing joke to ask him which one hair, teasing him about his lack of hair to get cut. Many people knew of his service to the country. What many people did not know was about his time in Vietnam. It was not something that he talked about often. To Dad, it was his job. I always knew he was a Bronze Star and double Purple Heart recipient from the war. I had heard how he had mailed his first Purple Heart home in an envelope to Grandma and Grandpa Champine, that when they received it, they thought he had died because there was nothing else in the envelope. What I did not know was how he received his medals, nor had I ever seen it. It was not until his passing when I told my mom I wished I knew how he received them that I learned how. She told me I had shared with her that it was earned during the Battle of Sioux City during the Tet Offensive, and that it had to do with him taking care of and protecting men in a room at the University over several days. After she told me this, I remember Dad telling us a story about R&R in Hawaii while he was in Vietnam. A few years back, Dad told my husband Ross and I about that R&R in Hawaii while he was in Vietnam. He told of another soldier asking him to do a favor and hand deliver a letter to his parents who owned a bar there. Dad said upon his arrival in Hawaii, he went to the bar, asked for the soldier's parents, and upon meeting them, handed them the letter. They read the letter and then called out to all those in the bar, "Hey, this is the man who saved our son's life." Dad said the rest of the trip he did not buy a meal or a drink, had a car to drive and a place to stay. I put two and two together. This was one of the soldiers he took care of during this battle, and it was how he earned the Bronze Star. A day or two later, while going through a Rubbermaid tote of pictures, I found the original newspaper article from the Manitowoc Herald Times about his Bronze Star recommendation. It also included information on one of his Purple Hearts. We also found his Bronze Star. We have not found the Purple Hearts, but I'm hopeful that they will be found too. My dad was and always will be my superhero. I have faith that I will see him again someday when Jesus calls me to my eternal home too. Thank you.
Okay, Michael Henry Champine. He was my little brother and the youngest of the 4 siblings. I'm 4 years and 1 day older than him. He was a kind and compassionate person. He loved his family and he loved his 2 dogs. And he loved God and he loved his country and his friends. Mike was a greeter at his church, and the people at church just loved him. Mike loved sports. He loved golf. He loved the Green Bay Packers, and he also loved the San Diego Padres. His hobbies were collecting old bottles. He even went scavenger hunting. Oops. Sorry about that. For old bottles when he was stationed in Panama. He also collected baseball cards. He enjoyed smooth jazz music and jazz concerts, musical shows, and plays. He also loved country music, and his favorite country western singer was Willie Nelson, and his favorite song was On the Road Again. Mike loved to travel. He liked to read, and he also liked to garden. And the Salvation Army has always been a part of our family's life. When my parents got transferred here from Michigan, we lived on York Street, and at that time the Salvation Army was located on Buffalo Street, just a couple blocks away. My parents didn't own a car, and the Salvation Army came over to visit and invited us to come to church, and the rest is history, so to speak. My mom worked at the thrift store for like 30 years. Mike took Corcadet lessons, which are Bible lessons, and after you complete the Bible lessons, you got a diploma and a pin. And the word Bible means basic information before leaving Earth. And Mike and Irene were married in this chapel 36 years ago. And Mike worked out at the Salvation Army camp in East Troy. He was a lifeguard and a boat boy for 3 years. And after Mike completed his Bible lessons, his name is on the plaque over there on the wall. So Irene said that Mike was at peace when he died, and he knew the Lord. And I thank you. Thank everyone for being here.
Mike is my baby brother. I'm 10 and a little over half years older than he is. And I remember my mother sent me to Michigan because she said when I came back home, she's going to have a surprise for me. And I thought, oh, I'm getting a bicycle free. So she said, you're going to have a baby brother. And I said, I don't want a baby brother. And he always teased me about that there. And for my birthday last year, he sent me a card and it said, Happy 80th birthday. And on the card he said, I always was a brat. And he said, wait, we are not done. But I love you with all my heart and soul.
We lived in Manitowoc when we were younger, and we lived on 15th Street, which is about 9 blocks that way. And I can remember when Mike went into the service at 65, I believe it was 1966, so I would have been 8 or 9. And I'm the second oldest of 9, so there was a bunch younger than me. And my mom and dad mentioned that Uncle Mike was coming home from the service. And I don't know if my memory's correct, but I believe that it was during the Christmas holidays. And first thing he did is he sat down and he asked every one of us how we were and what's going on. And we really felt important. He would take that time. And then he'd start to tell jokes, like my brother Maury would say. And we'd be in tears. And when he left, he just left so many memories with us. And another memory was in 1981, Maury and I were honored to play for the wedding here between Mike and Irene. And we were hoping that my future wife, Jean, would sing, but she was 9 months pregnant at the time. So we had enough material to play for the wedding, and just watching the two of them dance, you could just see the love that they felt for each other. Those are the memories that I have.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the light, let me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Hear my cry, hear my call. Hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When the darkness appears and the night draws near, and the day is past and gone, at the river I stand. Guide my feet, hold my hand, take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The Word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. God sent a man, John the Baptist, to tell about the light so that everyone might believe because of his testimony. John himself was not the light. He was simply a witness to tell others about the light. The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. May the Lord bless his reading and his words this morning.
Can you imagine life without lights? Look around, and everywhere we go, there is a light that we all take for granted. Inside lights, outside lights, Christmas lights, street lights, lighted signs. We have so many lights around. Our large cities shine for miles. Can you imagine living before light was invented? How about before man discovered fire? How about living in a time where the only light was a candle or a torch? Why do we love light? Why? Because it illuminates the darkness, right? That's why we love light. Can you imagine living in darkness? I don't think so. I know I cannot imagine living in darkness myself, but why? Why do so many people live in darkness? Isaiah 9:2 says this from the Old Testament. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine. See, there was an Old Testament prophecy about the real light of this world. The real light, a light which is to come with the sole purpose of filling the void of darkness. Yet many still choose to live in the darkness. They haven't accepted the light. Now let me share with you what Lieutenant Terry read for us again from John, the New Testament. John 1:9. In the beginning the Word already existed. The Word was with God. The Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through Him, and nothing was created except through Him. The Word gave life to everything that was created, and His life brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. God sent a man, John the Baptist, to tell about the light, so that everyone might believe because of his testimony. John himself was not the light. He was simply a witness to tell about the light. The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was coming. You see, John here is saying some pretty important things. Verses 1-4, the Word already existed. You understand that Jesus is the Word, and He was always there. He wasn't created by God. He always existed. In verse 4a, and His life brought light to everyone. His life brought light to everyone. Could this be the light that Isaiah was talking about? The prophet Isaiah, was this the light that he was talking about? Yes, it was. And verse 5, my favorite part. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. The darkness can never extinguish the light. Nothing can extinguish the light, which is the Word, which was with God, which is God. No matter how hard some people may try to run from the darkness of Satan, tries to create more darkness, it will never work, for the light has come and will keep filling the lives of those who choose the light over darkness. Verse 9, 8 and 9 say, just like Isaiah, who foretold that the light was coming, so John did also. You see, we have Old Testament We have the Old Testament saying the light is coming. And then we have John the Baptist saying the light is coming. John the Baptist's sole mission in life was to proclaim the coming of the light. The true light, who will give light to all, is coming. And he has come. Skipping ahead a little bit now to John 12, 44 to 46. Jesus shouted to the crowds. Jesus shouted to the crowds. If you trust me, you are trusting not only me, but also God who sent me. For when you see me, you are seeing the one who sent me. I have come as a light to shine in this dark world, so that all who put their trust in me will no longer remain in the dark. Here again is the same theme, only coming out of the mouth of Jesus. The same theme that came from Isaiah. The same theme that came from John the Baptist. Jesus is claiming for himself that he is the light who has come from the Father to a world of darkness. You see, we live in a world of darkness. Mike knew that we lived in a world of darkness. He chose to take his life and dedicate his life to the saving of other people, the physical saving of other people. He believed in Jesus Christ, so he wanted to save them spiritually too. Do you see? He wanted to fill them with light no matter how he had to do it. If it was in a jungle in Vietnam, or in his home back in the States, no matter where he was trying to save people. And that's what Jesus came to do, to save us. Are you saved? Are you going to be saved by Mike's memory of what he lived for? Because he lived for the light. He lived because of the light. He lived because of the darkness that was in this world. He wanted to make a difference. I see a man that has dedicated his life, who sacrificed his life. That's not a perfect man. There's no perfect men in this world. Only Jesus was perfect. Only Jesus was sinless. But that doesn't mean that a man that struggles with things like all of us men do, and all of us women do, cannot be a light to this world. Cannot let our light shine to this world. But there's one thing you must do. One thing you must do, and that is accept the light. You have to accept the light into your very being, into your very soul. And that's what I believe Mike did. The letter from Irene told me that he accepted that light into his life so that he could let it shine for other people. We need to take a clue from Mike here. We need to take a clue because his life is not over. It's not over for Mike. It's just beginning. You see, many of us believe that when you die, okay, maybe you go to heaven, maybe you go to hell. Oh, I believe in both. I believe Mike is in heaven, but he's not sitting around. Okay? There's no way Jesus takes a man like Mike and says, hey, go rest. Take it easy now. No way. You don't take a man who's gone through what he's gone through life and fought through what he's fought through in life. There's now a spiritual battle going on. Do you understand that? There's a spiritual battle going on every day. And Mike is now fighting alongside the Commander-in-Chief, Jesus Christ, for our very souls and for the souls of the world. He is fighting. He is fighting a great battle that no man's mind can even comprehend. He is not sitting around. He has been put back into service. Jesus has taken what Mike has learned here on earth and what he lived through and has now taken it to fight that spiritual war that is going on. And yes, there's a spiritual war going on. If you don't believe me, read your Bibles. There's a spiritual war going on, and he is right there on the front lines fighting along his commander-in-chief. And I know he is fighting hard. Yes, he's got a new body. Jesus has renewed him. The cancer is gone. Any ailments that he may have had are gone because he has a new body. Jesus has given him something that he has longed for. And now for eternity, do you understand eternity? Forever, Mike will live with Jesus Christ. He will live in glory. For Jesus is glory. And now he will live with Jesus in glory because he accepted Jesus Christ as his personal Savior and decided to go with the light. I do invite you to accept the light that Mike accepted and live a life worthy of our Lord and Savior.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, 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 Parker.